Delivering Happiness founder and Zappos consultant Jenn Lim says business owners should put employees first before customers and that we should give our staff way more control. She also supports the idea of paying staff to resign, all in the spirit of creating a ridiculously happy business. Before we get stuck into episode 395 of the Small Business Big Marketing Show, the Marketing Gold is made possible thanks to Amex and Design Crowd. Design Crowd is the world's #1 custom design marketplace where, with access to 550,000 designers, you'll get the perfect design every time. And you can get $100 off at designcrowd.com/Timbo. And you got to love the American Express Business Explorer credit card. It comes with 50,000 points bonus every year, a low interest rate, and 2 points on every dollar you spend. Not to mention a couple of tickets to the very swish Amex Lounge at Sydney International Airport. Terms and conditions apply, but you knew that. Search Amex Business to find out more.
Well, I said, welcome to the Small Business Marketing Show, where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back to the Small Business Big Marketing Show. I'm your host, Timbo Reid, but you, infinitely more importantly, are a motivated business owner ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire it deserves to be. Big show today, team. Delivering Happiness's Jenn Lim shares 5 proven ways any business can deliver happiness and why it's a non-negotiable. I'm going to show you how to get more guest blogger lovin', or should that be McLovin? That'll only make sense if you have watched Superbad, which is one of my favourite films of all time. I'm going to tell you about a new podcast I've just discovered, and we go back into the vault revisiting a chat with someone who left a corporate job she loved to start a business she loves even more. As per usual, team, there is marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. I got a wonderful, wonderful email this week from listener Jason Naylor, thanking me for encouraging him to start a podcast. He says, Timbo, I've done it. I've launched my podcast. My vintage VW Combi has become my recording studio, and I'm travelling New Zealand chatting to creators and artists, learning what they're building and how it's going to make money for them. He says it's the alchemy of creative and commerce, making art versus making money. I have had a listen to this podcast, which is called Breaking Art, and it's really, really good. Jason has got a really lovely way about him. His first 3 interviews, one's with a baker, one's with an author, one's with a stencil artist, and they're just it's just a great idea. How do artists make money? So I would encourage you to go and have a listen to Breaking Art. After you've listened, obviously, to the entire back catalogue twice of the Small Business Big Marketing Show. I also got an email from a listener with a marketing question, which I think is a very good marketing question. I think it might have been following my chat the other week with fellow hairdresser Lisa fellow hairdresser, it's not if I'm not exactly a hairdresser, but with coach to hairdressers Lisa Conway. This person says, hello from Park City, Utah. Recently discovered your podcast and we are loving it. We are a 2-chair barbershop in Park City, Utah. How can we expand our audience to a worldwide view? This is a great question, on a small business budget. We're located in a tourist town. We see clients from all around the globe, and we want to let those prospective clients know that we are here before the ski season hits. Lovely question. So really small business, 2-man barbershop wanting to to go global with their marketing. I think it's really big thinking. Well, barber shop, you didn't give me your name, which is very, very naughty, but the name of the barber shop's called Barbarian Barbering Company. Here's 4 things I do. Number 1, get a new website. I'm going to tell you, your current website is average. It's so average. It's got a price, it's got a menu and opening hours and nothing else. So it's time to up the website. How would I up the website? Idea number 2, create helpful content focused on Park City, Utah. Maybe a podcast revealing the cool things to do in Park City and have it sponsored by Barbarian Barbering Company. So when people are searching for stuff to do in Park City, Utah from afar, your show is going to come up, and that's what I would put on your website. Another thing I do is partner with travel agents. Partnering, very, very powerful idea. Just wrote a blog post this week on it. I'll put a link in the show notes, the power of collaboration and partnerships. And the last thing I do would be push for, maybe incentivise TripAdvisor reviews, because TripAdvisor, obviously, for anyone travelling anywhere, is the number 1 source of information. So, hey, thanks, Barbarian Barbering Company, for your questions. I hope my answers help you go global.
Do you need a speaker for your next conference? Recommend Timbo to your event organiser, or better still, book him. Tim Reid, that's reid.com.au.
You and I are going to be meeting some amazing business owners and marketers over the coming weeks. We catch up with 15-year-old Will Death, a toy importing entrepreneur who's well on his way to buying his first house. And we catch up with Byron Bay entrepreneur whose small tea selling business has contracts to supply the Sydney Opera House and Korea's biggest retailer. Amazing story about how a small business can get massive, massive contracts. But what about today's guest, I hear you ask? Well, that is a great question. I first met Jenn Lim at a conference I was emceeing in the Maldives a few weeks ago. But I had been very familiar with her work well before that. You see, Jenn is the CEO and CHO, Chief Happiness Officer, of Delivering Happiness, which is a San Francisco-based agency. She and Tony Hsieh, the very famous and celebrated Tony Hsieh, who is the CEO of Zappos, the world's largest online shoe store, co-founded to inspire science-based happiness, passion and purpose in the workplace. Tony, by the way, wrote the seminal book on this topic called, funnily enough, Delivering Happiness, which has sold literally millions and millions of copies worldwide. Great book, Delivering Happiness. The premise of Delivering Happiness is simple. Happier employees equal happier customers equal successful companies and more meaningful lives for those involved. And Jenn has got the science, believe it or not, to prove it. She's been a consultant with Zappos from startup days in 2003 to the $2 billion business it is today. She's created the Zappos Culture Book, an embodiment of how companies can use happiness as a business model. And now she's here to share her top 5 ways you can deliver happiness in your business. So we started off the discussion with a quick chat about where Zappos is at today.
How big is Zappos? Well, it's gone through a lot of changes. I think one of the biggest ones since, right around the time the book was launched, actually, was when it got acquired by Amazon. So that put forth some changes in the organization, but luckily, because of the agreement signed beforehand, they were able to retain their company culture. So these days, they've let go their fulfillment and warehousing specialties, for obvious reasons, because Amazon is, a forerunner in that end. So they're all located in Las Vegas right now. So I would say the latest count's about probably around 2,000 employees.
Wow. Big company.
Big company, yeah. And their revenues have been still steadily rising from, I think it was about $1 billion back in
2010.
Let's say, no, even before that, actually. The goal was to hit it by 2010, but they hit it earlier than that. And then it raised to $2 billion. And since the acquisition, they're not as open. Well, I'll say Amazon is not as open with the exact numbers on the revenue side.
It's quite interesting. You say when Amazon bought Zappos, part of the agreement was, to kind of paraphrase, that Tony and the team could maintain the company culture. Which is also always scary. You know, you hear about businesses getting sold and being gobbled up by the big guy, and that's the end of that wonderful little business. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's actually very surprisingly simple. It was part of the negotiation points coming on to the negotiation table. So knowing that company culture was always such a high priority for Zappos, there was a lot of other discussions with different companies and whatnot, but one of the big alignment points with Amazon was because basically Jeff Bezos and Tony Hsieh share a similar long-term view of thinking. And I think that's what really made the whole acquisition make so much sense on both sides. So literally on a piece of paper within the agreements, part of the understanding going forward was that culture will remain untapped and separate from the mother company.
Well, very insightful. Clearly. But, the reality is delivering happiness was the strategy that probably attracted Amazon to Zappos in the first place. So, Jeff's going, I'll give you lots of money, but do not change anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Is
Right.
Zappos, 2,000 employees, is it too big now to seriously be able to deliver happiness?
I would say no, just because we've been able to see how happiness can scale in an organization. And Zappos is just one of those companies that happen to, put priority in culture, but at the same time be able to grow in better directions and with more positivity, not just with the bottom line and profitability, but also caring for their people. So I think that because of that example and the work that we're doing with delivering happiness with other organizations around the world, the key is to be able to be mindful and on top of, wanting to scale that happiness throughout the company.
Well, I like that because, as I said to you before we hit record, there's a lot of small business owners listening, and part of the concept of this show is listen, implement, take action around the ideas you hear and grow. So even the 5-man plumbing business can grow into a 500-man and women plumbing business and still be delivering happiness. That is reassuring. What do you mean? It sounds obvious, but define delivering happiness.
Sure. Well, in our view, and we've been really a big stickler on this because we believe happiness is not just about rainbows and unicorns, although that's one form of it.
Oh, is it?
Well, for some, not all. But we really go back to the science of happiness and positive psychology. So this is actual research and data drawn from all these different studies around the world as to what true long-term meaningful happiness can be. And regardless of all the studies you look at, it boils down to pretty simple things, which is being true to your authentic self, living out a sense of a life of purpose, which is doing something greater than yourself. And there's other sort of levers of what happiness can mean, like senses of control and senses of progress and meaningful connections. But basically, those are the two things that define what we believe to be scientific happiness is: higher purpose and living true to your authentic self. You
got a lot of people listening, and I'm sure you get this when you do your keynote speaking, but you mentioned things like higher purpose and authenticity. What do you say to the business owners that are going, Jen, come on, mate, it's a bit soft. I'm running a business here. I need some harder metrics. I need a more strategic business model.
Well, I mean, we get naysayers all the time, and those are actually my favorite people to talk to because oftentimes by the end of the keynote or the end of our workshop, those naysayers are actually the ones that become our biggest advocates. And so what can be perceived to be soft is actually more and more rooted in the data of how these perceived soft things actually translate to metrics and KPIs. So I can bring up a whole bunch of studies, let alone, the case study we have at Zappos, but really companies internationally that have embraced this idea of, and they can call it whatever they want, it doesn't have to be called happiness per se. It could be called well-being, or basically putting your people first. And time and time again, when you have that focus and commitment at a strategic level, not just at an HR level, you see that those companies actually outperform those that don't. So, for example, here in the States, we have the Fortune's Best 100 companies to work for. In the last 15 years, for those companies that landed on that list, those that, care for their people, they actually outperform the S&P 500 over the last 15 years consistently, year after year. So that's just one really broad example, but I could talk till kingdom come about how all the soft, quote unquote, soft things are really translating to hard-coded KPIs and bottom line.
You've got some research on your website for the Delivering Happiness agency. Companies with a higher sense of purpose outperformed those without by 400%. So you're wrapping some science and numbers around it, because there'd be a lot of naysayers. I mean, you deal with the top end of town, I get that, but you get small business and it's hard. And when you tell them to do things like, guys, you just need to deliver happiness, you need to make your staff happy, you need to do some wacky stuff, which all, by the way, listeners, we're going to be talking about shortly. They could just kind of glaze over and say, righto, well, good luck with that. So let's hope by the end of this conversation that is absolutely not the case. So
I'd love to talk more on that.
Yeah, well, hey, you just raise it, because you know more about delivering happiness than I do, Jen. So,
well, when you say those the examples of small businesses, and we know that it's hard to run a small business. The percentage of those small businesses around the world, is pretty. The odds are stacked up against them.
Yes.
But what's been very incredible to observe, and especially after the book came out, are all of these different stories and CEOs reaching out to us, or it doesn't have to be a CEO, just an owner of a company across all different industries, from refrigeration to auto parts. I mean, it just, the gamut is very wide, and that's what made us feel a little bit more, I guess, gave us a little bit of assurance that our message was worthwhile. That it's not just about what Zappos did, but it's really about how we, as business owners, can actually use these principles towards not just ourselves as beings and create meaningful lives, but also be more profitable and sustainable because of it.
We're talking to Jenn Lim, who is the Chief Happiness Officer at the Delivering Happiness agency in San Francisco, and a long-time employee of Zappos. Up until when, Jen?
Up until the book launch, actually. So right around 2009. I was actually always a consultant there, to be totally transparent. But yes, was there for about 8 years.
Yes, please be transparent, Jen. There's no lying on this show.
No, not of our values either.
Yeah, correct. I was guessing that. Now, let's get stuck into these 5 ways to deliver happiness, because I think they're absolutely fascinating. Let's break them down. Let's give listeners a way of implementing them and maybe back them up with a story or two. The first one is deliver happiness to your employees first. Goodness me, I thought the customer was always first, Jen.
Yeah, and that that was a long-riding sentiment for many, many years, and a lot of companies actually still believe in that. And we're not saying don't cater to your customers. That's not the point. We've come to this really simple equation that where we say, if you can make your employees happy first, that'll actually equal happier customers, and that will actually equal a more profitable and sustainable business. At the same time, when you're doing this, it becomes more natural that you're bringing more authenticity to your own brand. So it sometimes can be a little counterintuitive, but I mean, we've seen a lot of examples, and not to, overhype the Zappos story, but just a reminder to all your listeners that Zappos was a small company once upon a time too. and, seeing the days that they were struggling, from 30 employees to where they are now, over all these years, I think there's some testament to the fact that, when they first started, it was all about selling shoes. But then they grew up a little bit and said, you know what, we want to be good at customer service. But then they grew up again, and this is where their, maturation point really hit a certain peak. They said, you know what, we actually know we want to have to make our employees happy first. And through that process, they were able to really turn their business model into something that's people first, and essentially that's what makes them have such great customer service and therefore become the successful company they are right now.
So this concept of making employees first, this is more about, giving them a ping pong table and an air hockey table and free coffee.
Well, once upon a time, that was true.
Yeah.
Especially during the heydays of the .com, the first .com here in the late 90s, which I was a part of. So I had participated in those ping pong matches and free beer on a daily basis, but it didn't really amount to much. Those are very extrinsic type of benefits that, it's just a very temporary high. But through the realization of what we've seen in the science of happiness and positive psychology, the more meaningful, if not intrinsic factors of a person is what we mean by happiness. So what I had mentioned earlier, how do we give our employees a greater sense of freedom? At the same time, a greater sense of accountability. So it's not that they're running around and not showing up at work and whatnot, but it really is tying in the sense of, look, we appreciate you for who you are and what you can bring to the company and be accountable for it. So therefore, that's how we're going to work on this together. There's a lot of examples on how to bring those more intrinsic type of benefits that are not about free coffee or beer and a ping pong table.
Okay. Give us a couple. How can a business, or give us examples of businesses that are delivering happiness to their precious employees first?
Yeah, so another example or lever of happiness is what we call perceived progress. So how can you give the employee a greater sense that they're getting somewhere quicker than they were before? So as an example, if there's a program that you have, a training program that you have your employees go through that usually lasts maybe 6 months or a year, sometimes it actually helps for the company to say, look, this is the full training, but we're going to divvy it up. So we're going to divvy it up. So every 2 months, every 3 months, we're going to reward you in some way. It doesn't even have to be through compensation. And in fact, that's what we saw at Zappos. The merchandising did that in their department, and there was no compensation reward, but just by acknowledging and giving recognition so that it's not this full-on year that they have to go through. But, every couple steps of the way, there's a sense of progress that they're making. And just by that act alone, the merchandising department actually felt happier and they were actually more productive. So that's just one example of using a principle of happiness, progress, to apply it to your employees, to make sure that they feel they're not just stuck in the same rut, that they're actually, there's mobility and an opportunity for advancement. Okay,
so just to be clear, there is nothing wrong with free beer within reason and air hockey tables, but part of delivering happiness to your employees is recognition, is acknowledging, is giving them suitable training, all the obvious things that is going to make someone feel as though they belong and that they are absolutely needed in this organisation.
Yeah, and I think it's nothing new in some senses, but I think the difference of what we're coming from is that these types of, training, recognition, it needs to be a little bit more authentic and aligned to what these individuals are. So it's not about the company always per se. It's actually about the people that make the company that it's important to align with and understand, their own purpose and their own values of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so making it so it's not about, the boss making more money. It's actually about the collective team doing something bigger than just themselves and making more money.
You mentioned the word authenticity a lot, and I hear it a lot being in marketing. What do you mean by it?
I think that authenticity in the very base of it is just being transparent. And so that is one of the biggest lessons we learned along the way at Zappos, and the sense of transparency. What does that really mean? So it could actually exist on so many levels, because there's the authenticity of your brand, which, is your company, and we believe the flip side of the same coin is the authenticity of your culture, which makes up your people. And then there's the authenticity of communication amongst the senior leaders, and then there's authenticity of individuals, and that essentially equates to being true to yourself. And that means for people to be truly themselves, they don't have to feel they have to keep their home hat at home and put their work hat when they enter the door.
Right.
It's really wearing one hat, because in the end, it's just life that we're all trying to lead.
I think an example of this, I remember interviewing a fellow who was responsible for bringing what at the time was called Virgin Blue out to Australia. It's now called Virgin Australia, but the airline, and he talked about the fact that the Virgin brand's so strong, everyone wants to work for it. So he didn't have an advertising bill to recruit people, right? Because they came to him. And one of the things he did when he employed people was that he would say, okay, this is the Virgin brand, be authentic to that, be true to that, but bring some of yourself along. And I remember him using the example of a cabin crew person he employed. Now, this woman, up until becoming a hostie on a Virgin Blue plane, was a face painter at kids' parties. And so part of her shtick, as now part of the Virgin cabin crew, was when a kid mucked up in the plane or was sad or was crying or whatever, she could go down and offer to paint his face or her face, right? So she was bringing some of her thing into the Virgin brand, and as a result, I'm guessing she loved working there.
Yeah, and I love that example, because what we're also saying is that it just doesn't necessarily need to apply to your customers. This actually can apply to your coworkers as well. And that's when a strong company culture comes, because everyone has different sorts of skills or, passions and hobbies outside of work. When they share that amongst their coworkers and their teams, then that actually creates a bigger sense of connection and community.
Love it. Pretty obvious, really, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Okay, we are moving on. Second way to deliver happiness in your business is to establish or revisit your company's purpose statement. This freaks me out a bit, Jen. I know you're going to simplify it, but I've been in a lot of big corporations where the purpose statement has been on the wall in reception. If you go then into the bowels of the business and ask people, hey, what's the purpose statement? People go, I don't know, never seen it.
Yeah, and that's my sentiment, 100%. I used to be a consultant at KPMG, and going through so many different industries and companies, it was the same exact thing. The plaque on the wall looked beautiful.
Beautiful.
And the words could be beautiful too, but walking around, no one really remembered it. So purpose statement is taking it even a step further than mission statement, because we've all seen those before.
Yes.
So purpose statement is, this is even, if I could define it, it's less of a mission of what our business is going to do operationally, or strategically even, but really it's a more aspirational statement for what our business stands for, more than just making money. And I'll give you some examples. But going to the Zappos really quickly. Example, we first started just trying to sell the most shoes, but evolving through the times, realized we don't want to be shoe sellers per se, so essentially changed that purpose statement to delivering happiness. And if you notice, that has nothing to do with shoes. No one would ever know that's a shoe company. And what we're seeing more and more of these really successful companies that are building their global brands is that they're doing the same exact thing. So, for example, familiar with Airbnb? Is it pretty big in Australia?
Huge.
Okay, cool. So, this is a company that started 9 years ago, and now they're valued at about $31 billion. But remember, once upon a time, they were a small company.
Two designers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so their higher purpose that they shared and probably spent a lot of good money on a Super Bowl campaign on this last year was belong anywhere. And that's it. Belong anywhere is their higher purpose. And everything that they do actually is driven from that statement alone. Same thing happened with Facebook. Zuckerberg actually announced this early this year. Instead of their original purpose mission statement, their new one is to bring the world closer together. And you notice in both examples, they have no reference to what they do as a business itself. It really is more an aspirational and humanistic level of what these companies represent and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Is this like Walt Disney was make the world a happier place?
Yeah, very similar to that, yes. And he totally was able to imbue that through all of his properties.
Is this not necessarily this idea of a purpose statement? It doesn't have to be a tagline. Airbnb's, I think, which is belong anywhere. That actually sits under a logo somewhere, whereas I'm not sure bringing the world closer together is customer-facing for Facebook. Is it most important that, first and foremost, your purpose statement is just known by your employees?
I think that is probably most important, that the statement is not only known by the employees, but also aligned by them. In fact, it's part of the recruiting process that we recommend is that, if this person doesn't align what this purpose statement is and core values, which we can talk about later, but essentially it's not going to be a right fit for your company. So yes, of course, it's important for the employees to know, but I also think it's more and more important for external people within your ecosystem to know as well. So your partners and your vendors and obviously your customers, because it gives that much more reason to align with your brand than another brand that may or may not have a purpose statement or may not be living up to their purpose statement.
How do you filter out employees? Let's use Zappos as the example. How do you know if someone's going to deliver happiness, if they're going to be on purpose?
Yeah, so it's pretty rigorous in terms of the recruiting process. And it's not just about living up to the purpose, but it's also living up to the core values, which is actually another point that I want to make in terms of delivering happiness to people. So by going through not just, the traditional type of interviews, it actually is, and this is not just Zappos, this is something we believe at GH and what we recommend as well, it's actually interacting with people outside of the interview. That's really important. One of the things that Zappos did back in the day was essentially they had a shuttle driver pick up a candidate to take them to Zappos, do the whole interview, and then return them to the airport or hotel, wherever they're going. And what would happen then is the recruiter would actually talk to the shuttle driver and talk to the receptionist to see how they were treated. And so if they weren't treated with respect, then it's just a no-brainer. Even if they interviewed extremely well, it wasn't a good fit. And so now that this story is very prevalent, we can't do that anymore. Most people that interview at Zappos knows this story now.
I love it. Busted.
Right.
Don't you also speak, and this story may live elsewhere, tell me if it does, but coming to Zappos, and maybe you recommend this to other clients now, but you offer an incentive for people not to take the job?
Yeah, that's right. So it's part of the Pay People to Quit program that they have. And essentially, every trainee that comes through the door, it's a 5-week training program, they have a standing offer to take a check and just walk out the door, no questions asked. And the reason why is because if they don't really align with Zappos' purpose and core values, then it really is not going to be a good fit. And so the business sense of that is that because of this program, they're actually saving Zappos money in the long run, because we now know that it actually costs companies about 150 to 300% of that person's salary to realize it's the wrong hire and to rehire someone new. So at the end of the day, it's actually saving companies money to be better at the recruiting process than to have to deal with it later.
How big's the check, and how long do they have to claim that check before they once they've started?
Yeah, well, originally it was only $100, and now it's actually at $5,000, and they keep on raising that because not enough people are taking it, and that's not a joke. They have 5 weeks at the beginning of their training time, or the duration of their training time, to take that check.
I love it. It's so counterintuitive, but I love it. You know, it also makes a whole lot of sense. I'm talking to Jenn Lim, Chief Happiness Officer at Delivering Happiness and past Zappos employee. I'm guessing Zappos is still probably number one client at Delivering Happiness, Jenn?
We actually, because I used to, consult there, but since I branched off and Tony and I started this new company, I've been focusing on trying to really scale this concept to everyone around the world, all organizations. So that's been my focus.
That's your focus.
These days.
Okay.
Yeah.
The third way of delivering happiness is to establish or revisit your own DNA via core values. Gee, there's a lot of big words in there. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, I'll bring it to the simple thing about core values. And I know that sometimes especially for small businesses, can sound kind of corporate-y.
Yes.
Like, what are your core values? And we felt the same things at Zappos when we first started thinking. The big question was, well, okay, we built a decent company, but now our biggest worry is how we're going to maintain our company culture. And so that's when core values were introduced. That was about I'd say 4 or 5 years into the existence of Zappos. And what makes this different from those, shiny plaques on the wall with values on it is that we actually went to every single employee to ask them to submit their own personal core values. And it took about a year's time, and doesn't necessarily have to take this long for other companies. We've heard different examples across the board, but essentially through that year's time was able to boil them down to the 10 values that they have today and essentially kind of test them to see whether or not they stand up to different circumstances and conditions between the employees and communication. And they actually were able to survive the test. And so what those values mean is being able to not just put those meaningless words on the wall, but we actually define specific behaviors out of them so that it's not sort of a gray area. It's more of a black and white interpretation of what, let's say, the word integrity means. A funny example that we have back in the day here is that Enron's, one of their values was integrity, and we all know how that company went. So the difference is that if we are defining values and behaviors, then there's clarity for all your current employees and even more importantly, your future employees of what your values are, because as you grow, and we all want that, and we want that at a great scale, but unless you have these senses of values and purpose in place, that origination, which is why I call the DNA, it gets lost. The origination of why we started the company, the origination of how we started our culture and what we really believe in, that unfortunately, as companies grow in size, gets put on the back burner. But the point is that it's too important to not have them consistently in place with your growth.
Very interesting. You went out over the course of a year and asked all Zappos employees what do they value the most, which, that just feels like a massive job. I've run core values workshops, and generally, here's what I like to do. Maybe I'm just taking the easy way out. You tell me. But first and foremost, if you're talking to a business owner, that person, he or she is the one who had the idea for the business and has brought that business to market and has made it successful through for whatever reason. Now, it's their core values, it's their personality, it's their original mission and vision that you could argue is the reason for the success. What I've found is then when you cast the net wider and speak to employees who probably don't have skin in the game, i.e. equity, shares, any other reason for the business succeeding than, I'll keep my job if it does, it starts to, you go from being a very articulated brand to a brand that feels very watered down because everyone's saying, oh, yeah, I like integrity and I like honesty and I like fun. And all of a sudden, you've just got this really long list of words that are meant to be core values. Do you see the problem?
I do. And I think a simple solution, or actually a simple question to ask before going down the path of revisiting or creating core values is, number one, is the company and therefore the people within it, is it representative of what truly the company is about? And if that's not the case, then I would not recommend saying, survey everyone in the company, because then you'll get all these different answers. But when it happened with Zappos and when it happened with other companies that we work with today, the assumption is that this company is made up of people that we want to keep, and we believe that actually represents the brand in a fundamental way. So if that's not the case, then it's more about picking these people that you think that are really representative of that culture, and maybe even making them spearhead of the project.
Right.
Because then again, it's more authentic to the true DNA that you've built.
As we tick off, Jen, these ways of a business can deliver happiness, it feels to me it requires a level of maturity on behalf of the business owners to really stand back and look their staff in the eye and go, this is you and me. It's not just me. I'm not here just to make money, I'm going to make money by you guys being happy. Now, that's quite again, obvious, but requires a level of maturity. I'm guessing you come up against some owners that just kick and scream.
That is definitely the case. And I'm glad you brought that up, because while these all seem to be very, and they should be more like practical, tactical things that we can do for our companies, it really is not going to happen in a sustainable way unless the leadership of the company really has a sense of self. And the rest of it really becomes the sense of self within the leader becomes a beacon for everyone else in the company, and therefore its values and its higher purpose. When you just said that, it really makes me think of Joshua at Platinum Electricians, because his whole story was about that. He was gifted the book from someone, and he hadn't heard of Delivering Happiness, hadn't heard of Zappos, and he read it, and what he relayed to me, it just really changed the way he looked at not just his business, but also himself. And that's why I think he's such a great example of what these concepts can do, not just to, move the bottom line and make it as successful as he is today and the rest of all his company, but truly change from within. And being a part of that and seeing that firsthand in the Maldives was pretty incredible.
Josh is a great example, and listeners, for those of you who don't know who we're talking about, Josh Nichols, past guest, one of the more popular episodes of the Small Business Big Marketing Show, Jen, and Josh absolutely embraced the Delivering Happiness business model, and the difference being he implemented. He got very excited. He's an excitable young man, and he implemented, but he's also maintained it throughout the years too, and there's a massive difference there. Now, speaking of Josh and Platinum, and I'll put a link, by the way, in the show notes to that past interview with Josh. I love this fourth way of delivering happiness. I think it's my favourite. Build meaningful relationships and wows across your ecosystem.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites as well, because going back to the science, having meaningful relationships is actually one of the biggest ways to have sustainable happiness in our lives. And so by applying this not just to our personal relationships, but in business, we've seen such amazing results, because essentially when we get together and have a relationship with someone, it previously used to be a lot more transactional, but now to make it more meaningful and thinking about it in a way that we no longer live in a zero-sum game in any circumstance or any opportunity in the whole world. And that in itself becomes this platform for consistent win-win-win situations. And one of the things that we've also noticed is that, the expectations for customers and clients, no matter where we are getting so high, and they're higher than ever. So what we say is just do the unexpected. And the terminology that they use at Zappos is to wow your customer, wow your colleague, wow your partner and your vendor. And this has really been consistently a very huge success factor in making happiness work.
Give us some examples.
Let's see. And there was actually not too long ago, I was going around on this tour of speaking engagements, and it was pretty hectic. 20 cities, 3 months, and was using a lot of the Marriott brand during that time. And one of the hotels I was in, I don't even remember what city anymore, I walk in and they have a really cool cafe, kind of looking of like, your fancy Starbucks, whatever. And I would just, every time I go in, I'd grab a whole bunch of stuff and go out to the counter, and they would say, "Oh, you're okay. Don't, no worries. Never mind. You're fine."
Free cafe.
Right, exactly. And I was like, "Wait, what's going on?" And I did it again later on in the afternoon, and they had the same response. And so for my social survey purposes, I went and done it. I did this for another 5-8 times. I don't even remember, just to see whether it worked. And it did consistently. And all this to say that there is this sense of, hey, if you're a good customer, if you're loyal to our brand, we want to wow you in return. And that clearly wowed me, because now I'll be more loyal to that brand of what they did differently than any other hotel that I stayed in.
That seems like an expensive wow, but by the way, Marriott could probably afford that. But for the smaller business listening, is it simple things like maybe a follow-up call after you've done from the boss? Is it that type of little? I call them are these the 1%ers that can make a big difference?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. That's an example of where you need a budget for it. But there are so many little things that as companies can do. It is those, going a little bit further in the personal connection of a handwritten note, or for their next sort of interaction with them, giving something a little different than other small businesses do, or not do at all. So the point is, it's not about the monetary value. It really is, what's the extra little wow that we can give our customers that no one else is doing.
Is this urban myth? I could be wrong, but do Zappo's employees have a budget that they can spend without seeking approval with any client, with any customer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. And the same thing goes with Ritz-Carlton, which is renowned for their customer service as well. So all the customer service reps have a budget, and everyone actually at Ritz-Carlton, regardless if you're in at the front desk or housekeeping, they have what I believe the last time I checked was about a few $1,000 budget.
Whoa.
But again, it doesn't. Again, it's not about the that number. It really is about, there's so many things as we're all our own experts in our own fields, doing something what we call buff. So it's best, unique, or first, that other people in our fields or quote unquote competitors aren't doing.
Yeah, okay. So just to finish up on this fourth one, because I do love it, what's the exercise that you take clients through to come up with a whole lot of wows?
Mm-hmm. It's really pretty much a role-playing thing. So it's as if you're mapping out the entire point-to-point, node by node interaction with your customer. So this could be anywhere from the initial email exchange, or now more and more we're using text. And that's actually been a really great differentiator of those that are available via text, knowing the trajectory of where we're going with mobile. So just mapping those things out, like where do we touch our customers aside from the in-person? And so once you map that out, then you can actually ask yourselves those questions. With every touch point, what can I add in there that will be a wow experience that no one else is doing?
Love it, Jen. You've just confirmed that I was doing something right, because I literally say to clients, draw a straight horizontal line. On the left-hand, far left is when a prospect first comes into contact with your business. On the far right is after they've bought from you, and everything in between are little moments of truth, and identifying where those moments of truth are, those interactions that you're going to have. What can you do to make them go, wow? Love it. Can I have a job at Delivering Happiness?
I was just going to ask you after this interview.
Stop it. I'll bring it to Australia. We'll talk later, Jen. I'll get my people to talk to your people. Thank you. I know we're going over time. Are you okay?
Yeah. I apologize for these moments. I'm like trying to hold in that cough, and I'm like, oh God.
I know. Yeah, listeners, we've both got man flu. Well, I've got man flu. Jen's got the ladies' flu, which is not as painful. Don't go there. I've just lost my job at Delivering Happiness before I even started.
Yeah.
The fifth way to deliver happiness: give your employees more control. My God, I think we've just lost all business owners.
Mm-hmm.
What do they say? The lunatics are running the asylum.
Well, now you know how things are going around here. But that's why I think you'd be perfect for Delivering Happiness, Tim.
Love it. Talk to me. Interview's over.
So, all right. So this again is a counterintuitive thing, something that we mentioned earlier, but. Like I said, now that expectations are high, it's better to do the unexpected. Mm-hmm. So by giving employees more control, what we've seen is that, and this is the new day and age, right? Like, and we hear a lot about, the millennials and yada, yada, yada. And what we believe is that it doesn't need to be looked at that way, because at the end of the day, we are humans, and we're in a very rapidly changing society around the world. So it's a greater, more meaningful ask of what employees are asking than ever before. And so by giving them more control over what their role is, over what their job is, their responsibilities, but at the same time, and this is very big, to make sure they're accountable for it, we've seen time and time again that they'll actually be more productive, more engaged, and work harder for the company while staying longer at the company. So here you're addressing all these different points of all these issues that we're having with, this today's workforce. So one of the examples, if I could just mention, there's a doctor's office, and I was talking to someone that came up to me after a keynote, and he said, I know exactly what you mean, because I love going to my doctor's office. And I said, all right, tell me more, because who loves going to their doctor's office? I don't know that many. And he said, I realized last time because I went to the front desk and the receptionist gave me her usual, smile, and we talked and we were laughing. And then she gave me her business card, and on it, the title said, the Director of First Impressions. And for him, it all clicked, because she felt more control of her job. She's not just a receptionist. She's going to own whatever she wants to do because she wants to do it. So that's just a small, non-monetary example of giving people more control.
I guess the proof of the pudding of that is she really? Is that just a title on a business card that's cool and funky, or is she really the Director of First Impressions? Does she have influence, budget, authority to make changes in that doctor's practice to do that?
That's a great question.
Yeah. And if she does, then wow, cool.
Yeah, unfortunately, I never didn't follow up with that. This is a guy that I know.
Jen, can you just get her on the phone, maybe? Call now. Let's give her a buzz. See what the first impression's like.
we put out a smoke signal.
But I get that, and great. I mean, we agree that as long as it's not lip service, and as long as applying these principles is much more than word of mouth. It's not word of mouth, is lip service. Then you're on the way to delivering happiness. Well. Yeah. I love it, Jen. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm guessing with Delivering Happiness, the agency that you now run, what's your purpose? Can I have a guess that is to make the world a better place?
I guess that would be a generic one. Yeah, I mean, in some ways we all are, I would believe.
You would hope.
Yeah, and I would believe in hope. But my purpose revolves around people, and given the level of awareness that we've had of what we've been doing, and the fact that we've been able to impact organizations around the world of this concept towards true, not just positivity and happiness, but really meaningful life changes. That's what I hope to continue to do.
Yeah, lovely. How can people find out more about Delivering Happiness? Because I guess you guys don't deal with small businesses, but if people are interested, how can they find out more?
Sure. Yeah, we do hold workshops and boot camps and master classes for smaller companies as well. So not to preclude anyone at all, one of our missions is to be able to, connect and hopefully help every organization. So if you just come to our website, it's just www.deliveringhapiness.com. These meds are getting to me. I have to apologize with this.
Yeah, and I'm
she flu.
Yeah, correct. I'm on that website now. There's a fantastic blog, and there are some fantastic resources, including worksheets and things to download. So deliveringhappiness.com. Jenn Lim, thank you so much for fighting your way through the flu and joining us and lifting the lid on. You know, as I said at the top, soft business strategy on the surface, hard underneath. And, you know, if you get it right, clearly, you might be the next Zappos, which would be kind of cool. Just to finish on, what are 2 or 3 other businesses, because we talk about Zappos a lot, and why not? They birthed this concept. What are 2 or 3 other brands that listeners could look to see delivering happiness in action?
Well, I could name the big ones, but
go.
Because it's a smaller business, I feel that might not be as
whatever works.
All right. Well, let's see. There's HP, which some people may be familiar with. Small company called McDonald's. You might be familiar with.
Yeah.
But given, this is a small business audience, I really want to iterate that. And if you're interested in specific case studies too of how this has impacted small businesses around the world, I think that's even more of applicable to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I would leave it at that. If you would like to learn more about those, then just let us know.
Love it. Thanks, Jenn.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
Well, there you go, team. Delivering Happiness's Jenn Lim. Coming up, I'm going to share my top 3 attention grabbers from that fireside chat with Jenn. Plus, I'm going to show you how to get more blog posts written without having to lift a pen or hit a keyboard. You know what I mean. Cheap, quick, great. I used to work with a designer who'd force me to choose 2 of those 3 options whenever I wanted something designed. As a small business owner with limited funds, it drove me nuts that I could never have all 3. That's why I love Design Crowd. You see, Design Crowd is a website that helps startups, small businesses and marketers outsource custom design, from logos and business cards to websites and landing pages. In fact, Design Crowd gives you access to over 550,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco, ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. Here's how it works. You post a brief describing your design need. Within hours, you'll receive your first design, and over the next 3 to 10 days, a typical project will receive 60 to 100 different designs from designers around the world. You then pick your favourite, make any changes, and pay the designer. You know, whether you're an entrepreneur looking to set up your brand or an established business that needs marketing collateral designed, Design Crowd is your answer. For a special $100 VIP listener offer, go to designcrowd.com/Timbo or enter the discount code Timbo when posting a project. See, now you can have cheap, quick and great design thanks to Design Crowd. Here's a money-making tip from American Express member and 4 Pillars Gin founder, Stu Gregor.
I, for the life of me, don't understand why a business won't accept Amex, because what you're potentially doing is knocking back customers who want to spend money on your product or your brand or your service or whatever it is. And I frankly don't understand it. If someone wants to give me their Amex and buy 10 bottles of gin, I'll tell you what, I'll take their Amex, thanks very much. You're potentially also denying yourself a big chunk of corporate business as well. You know, because a lot of sales guys, a lot of guys, I know me in my own business, I use Amex. And if I ring to make a booking at a restaurant or a bar or something, I say, do you accept Amex? And they say no, I go somewhere else. So they don't even know the business they're missing out on. It beggars belief. And I often find myself having these rather awkward conversations at the with a shopkeeper or a bar owner or a restaurateur saying, why wouldn't you take it? I'll pay you the extra. I'll pay 1.5, the credit card service fee or whatever you want. Take my money.
It's Business 101, really. Make it easy for people to give you money. Speaking of money,
The American Express Business Explorer credit card comes with 50,000 bonus points every year, a low interest rate and 2 points on every dollar you spend. Not to mention a couple of tickets to the very swish Amex Lounge at Sydney International Airport. Search Amex Business to find out more. New American Express card members only. Terms and conditions apply.
My top 3 attention grabbers from my chat with Delivering Happiness's Jenn Lim, thanks to American Express and Design Crowd. Attention grabber number 1. Often the things that will have the greatest positive impact on your business are not that complicated to implement. They require a level of courage to implement, but once you break through the barrier of fear, the rest is easy. And I think this whole delivering happiness concept falls under that banner. Not as hard or as complicated as you think, but clearly with some pretty big upside. Attention grabber number 2, I love the whole delivering wow thing and the BUD approach for delivering wow experiences. Either be the best, the most unique, or be different. And remember, this applies, by the way, delivering wow to employees, suppliers, partners, even your customers. Did a great episode on this with Josh Nichols from Platinum Electricians, which we mentioned during that interview. I'll put a link in the show notes to that interview because it actually talks about how Platinum is delivering wow all along the customer journey. Attention grabber number 3, deliver happiness to your employees first. Wow. How counterintuitive is that? I thought the customer was first. Hey, what about those precious customers? Like I said, delivering happiness takes courage, which I think it might be worth finding. What grabbed your attention? Head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/395. Let me know.
What have you got to lose?
It's time for one simple yet effective marketing idea that you can implement immediately. One that won't cost a fortune, that might just generate you more awareness, more inquiry, and ultimately more sales. I call today's idea the guest blogger lovin' hack. Now, you know how much I love blogging as a way to market your business. I also get that blogging consistently, let's say weekly, can be a little onerous when you're trying to make a living. But what if you didn't have to write every blog post? What if other key people in your industry blogged for you? That'd be cool. One of the best ways to tap into an influencer's network is to ask them to guest blog on your website and offer to pay them either with money or with exposure. This way, you're giving them a backlink, a platform to write on, and possibly monetary benefits as well. In exchange, you get a quality article, and most likely the influencer will share it with their audience. So, here's my 3 steps to getting a bit of guest blogger lovin'. Step 1, create a list of the top 10 people you'd love to have write a 500-word article for your blog. Step 2, to make it easy for them to say, hell yeah, I'll do that, then also come up with a couple of potential ideas for their article. Also make it clear that they're welcome to come up with their own ideas. And step 3, send each influencer a brief, personalised email outlining your ask and making clear what they'll get in return. And here's the pro tip, team. If they kick and scream about the idea of writing 500 words, that's cool. Suggest they record their article using their smartphone. Then you simply get the file transcribed and tidy it up before publishing. That's my 3 steps to getting some guest blogger lovin'. Head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/395 where you'll find a link to this post plus some additional resources to bring this idea to life, including the definitive guide to guest blogging and a link to purchase a signed copy of my book, The Boomerang Effect, that'll get you right into the positive marketing mindset that you so much deserve. So,
What have you got to lose?
You and I cover some pretty serious marketing ground in this show. Have you listened to that chat I had with Nourished Life's Irene Falcone? She's created a multi-million-dollar business by solving a personal problem.
I was so exhausted, and I was a mum. I've got 4 children. I was a complete makeup junkie, so I was slathering my body with, now we find out I was slathering my body with up to 500 different chemicals every single day, and that's what women do. And I never really thought about what was in those products. I just sort of sat down on that step and I grabbed something out of my bag, rubbed it on my legs so I could keep walking. And I looked at the back and I thought, that was really the first time what am I putting on my body? That was the first time I ever really thought about it. Mm-hmm. And, it just sort of sat with me for the rest of the day. And then when I got home that night, I started Googling and looking up what these chemicals were. Google sent back some things that didn't sound very good about these chemicals.
Irene started to blog about her chemical discoveries and very quickly built up a tribe of like-minded individuals. She's now running an e-commerce business selling toxin-free products and turning over a lazy $20 million a year. Plus, in that episode, I show you how to make a boring presentation rather interesting. Hey, I'd love to hear from you. Hit the contact button over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com where you can email me, connect with me on social media and grab a signed copy of my book, The Boomerang Effect. And a big thank you to the American Express Business Explorer credit card for making this show possible. If you love the idea of your business expenses rewarding you, you are going to love that credit card. Search Amex Business to find out more. And check out Design Crowd, the world's #1 custom design marketplace, where with access to 550,000 designers, you'll get the perfect design every time, and you can get $100 off your brief over at designcrowd.com/Timbo. If you love the Small Business Big Marketing Show, then let another business owner know about it by grabbing their phone and downloading it for them there and then. Maybe do that 2 or 3 times a week. That'd be wonderful. Thank you. Until next week, I'm Timbo Reid. Thanks for tuning in. May your marketing be the best marketing. Bye for now.